Earlier today, President Biden signed an executive order that shuts down asylum claims once they reach a certain level. Our own Julia Ainsley has all the details.
Down here in McAllen, a border town in Texas, a lot of things are continuing as usual. You can see that just behind me at this bus station, migrants are still boarding these buses and going to other places in the country. What will change effective today is that when more migrants come across illegally, effectively crossing the Rio Grande River and going to turn themselves into Border Patrol, they will not be eligible for asylum unless they can prove that they somehow meet a higher standard. If they can prove that they would face a high likelihood of torture upon return, if they have an acute medical need here, if they're an unaccompanied child, for example, these are all ways that they could be exceptions to the rule. But otherwise, they cannot get asylum if they cross the border illegally. This is actually a page from President Trump's playbook and one that was enjoined by the courts under that administration. And so we can expect to see very swift action from immigration advocacy organizations like ACLU and others who will challenge this in court. Another practical problem with this, I'm told by Border Patrol agents, is that ICE and Border Patrol lack the manpower to put this into place. They will have to deport anyone who is not eligible, and there will be so many people who will not be eligible for asylum now, and they lack the space to hold them in CBP facilities and ICE facilities, and they lack the number of airplanes to deport them. Furthermore, a huge, fast-growing nationality coming across the border are Venezuelans, and Venezuela in large part refuses to take back any of its nationals who are being deported from the United States, which would create a huge problem for the way this is supposed to go. But for those who still want to cross legally, they can continue to do so. They can make an appointment through the CBP One app. They can go through a legal port of entry, and life will continue for them. This is all part of the Biden administration's strategy to try to make it harder to cross illegally and open up more pathways to cross legally. Of course, we are hearing from some Republicans today who are saying it's too little, too late.
And one might say, what have they done lately? Our thanks to Julia down in Texas today. I want to welcome former Democratic Congressman and old friend of mine, Tim Ryan of Ohio, founder of the organization We the People. Glad to have you here tonight. Mark McKinnon joins us, former advisor to both George W. Bush and John McCain. And Larry Sabato is here, director at the Center for Politics at University of Virginia, where he is a professor and presidential historian. Tim, let's talk about this, because Speaker Mike Johnson called today's executive action window dressing. And I'm not saying that we haven't been waiting a while for something aggressive, but what in the world have Republicans done at all on the border? Anything.
And they had a chance. There was a comprehensive bill that they had in the Senate. Senator Langford, who I served in the House with, good guy, sincere guy, reached across the aisle. I mean, you heard at the end there, they were talking about we're not going to have enough Border Patrol to actually secure it. It's because you need an act of Congress to appropriate the money to hire more Border Patrol, which is what the deal included. So President Biden is now forced to do the executive order with zero help from the Republicans. But I think there's not a lot in politics. It's obvious what's going on. This is pretty obvious. We had a bill, bipartisan. Trump deep-sixed it. Now Biden's got to do the executive order.
And on what grounds could they possibly say this is window dressing?
Well, I mean, you know, just go to your last segment. The truth does not matter here. It matters, like, what can they continue to repeat, get in the echo chamber, drive their voters out, and hopefully persuade some people, middle-of-the-road voters. But I think, you know, Biden had to do this. It's not as strong as anybody wants because it's not an act of Congress.
Mark, you and I have spoken a lot about the border over the last couple of years. What do you think of this move? Is he now putting Republicans on the defense?
Well, listen, it shows that the Democrats, first of all, they had a plan that Tim pointed out Republicans didn't take advantage of because they wanted to use this issue as a weapon because they know the system is broken. I mean, listen, the actions that President Biden took today, I think most people in America would say, well, that sounds pretty reasonable. That doesn't sound like it's too much. And they know that there's a real crisis there. And the problem for me, with the Biden approach, it's just been that through body language, through not showing up on the board, they've left an open field to Republicans who talk about it every single day. Donald Trump's talked about it every single day since he announced the first time. And Biden just hasn't talked about it that much and hasn't been down there that much you could say that that's demagoguing the issue, but Republicans see that advantage and they've taken advantage of it. My criticism, too, has been that Democrats have plans on the shelf. DHS has a plan to distribute funds around the country to different localities, to take the burden off the border, to give resources to other cities who are willing to take migrants. And it's never been executed, and I don't know why. It's a great plan, and so I just wish Democrats have a good bill that Republicans walked away from, but they also have good plans on the shelf. So today's a good start. They just got to do more, and they got to talk about it more because it is an issue and people care about it.
Well, they're doing it more. The president is taking action. Obviously, Larry, you don't need me to tell you it's an election year, and we know all sorts of voters, apolitical voters, Democrats, Republicans from all over the country are concerned about immigration. It is a top issue. Do you think the president's actions now will have an impact, given how much Republicans have been banging on about it for the last 3 years?
It'll have this impact. It finally gives Democrats a complete answer. It's a short, punchy answer that will enable Biden to move to issues that Democrats can actually win on, because it certainly isn't immigration. So they can go to reproductive rights. They could go to the preservation of the republic. But he needed something that would enable him to transition to these better issues. And now he has a complete answer. It isn't just that Donald Trump killed the bipartisan immigration reform, which would have been, I think, a very solid way to move. He can also say, we've come up with this. This is a reasonable solution. And, oh, by the way, here are the other issues that really matter this year. Again, Democrats are not going to win on immigration. They need to change the subject, even though it's important and people want to hear about it, but they need to change the subject.
Tim, there's a lot of reasons why I'm happy you're here tonight, but this one specifically. There's one group of people who are not going to be happy about President Biden's action today, and that is the more progressive members of your party in Congress. We're hearing from some of them outspoken, unhappy with the president. What is your take on that?
Well, I think you got to understand, we do have to know who's coming in and out of the country. There are real national security implications here, and we need to have an orderly process. I think most people in the country appreciate immigration. We know we're a country of immigrants. The problem you have when you talk to Republicans, you talk to independents, they say, but you can't jump the line. The people that are waiting.
There's many Democrats who feel that way.
Right. I mean, including myself and I think many others. And so you can't let the tail wag the dog here. Of course, we don't want to be separating families. That's why you want to have Joe Biden as president implementing some of this stuff, not Donald Trump going through the horrific things that we went through last time. And I think the other, and Larry's obviously the student of this stuff, the other line of attack is Trump's in it for himself. You talk about the trial. You talk about everything else.
I better write this down. I haven't heard this argument before. One more time. You said Trump is in it for himself.
And being in New York, why would you know anything like that?
I got that.
And it just, I think it plays into it. It's like, it's not about the country. It's not about the border. You're full of, you know what, and this is just one more example. So, and then pivot to those other issues. But I think most people, we have to have a solid border. Immigration is good for the economy. It adds to the GDP. All of a sudden, people go from, not paying in the Social Security, not paying in the taxes, to driving our economy, having more money in their pockets. The unions can organize them, and you're going to drive up wages. So there's a win argument here. We just got to be aggressive.
It's actually stunning because former President Trump, who couches himself the good guy for business, what he wants to do, mass deportation, devastating for our economy. Mark, what is your take? Some members of the Democratic Party, more left-wing lawmakers, are unhappy with President Biden for taking this turn.
Well, it's a page book out of the Sister Souljah from Bill Clinton. I mean, go ahead and make some people, feel some pain from the left. That suggests to people in the middle that Biden's taken some tough measures that needed to be taken. And the point is that, I mean, where are the progressives going to go? To Donald Trump, who wants to do a mass deportation? The thing that attracted me to George W. Bush was largely his position on immigration. He was very compassionate about it, had a pathway to citizenship. There's nothing compassionate about Donald Trump's approach. So, listen, you may be unhappy with Biden's approach if you're a super progressive on this issue, but it's a reasonable position. And listen, you want Joe Biden as president next fall, not Donald Trump, because you're going to be very unhappy with what he's going to do.
Larry, let's go back to your last point, how you had said Democrats want to make this point and move on. But break down, what does the polling say when it comes to the border and immigration right now? Because until now, or until just a few months ago, we always heard about the border from Republicans, less so from Democrats, the ones who've actually taken action in the last few months.
Yes, and I think for years now, not just during Biden's term, Republicans have been heavily favored whenever you discuss the border or immigration. Now, partly that's because Democrats have been afraid of the issue. And look, one thing that I think should be made, one point that should be made is, at least in my experience, progressives in this era are not the equivalent on the other side of the far right. They are really unreasonable. They will not compromise. They will beat their party leaders to a pulp if it helps them get some little amendment passed. You know, progressives, do they have more liberal views than others? Yes, they do. And sometimes it can hurt. And Tim Ryan ran a great race in Ohio because he was a centrist. It's tough to win as a centrist even in Ohio anymore. But still, the progressives are reasonable. And as Mark was just saying, who the heck are they going to vote for? They're going to throw their votes away if they go for RFK or one of the other three now, independents and third-party candidates. And they're certainly not going to sit at home, because if they do, they're as guilty as anybody who votes for Trump. In the end, they'll be reasonable, at least the vast majority will, and they'll come back to Joe Biden. So I'm not saying diss them. I'm not saying treat them badly. Just recognize that they're more pragmatic. That's not a bad word. They're more pragmatic than the far right is for the Republicans.